Okay.
But how will you share it?
How can I share?
Yeah, you will send it to us.
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Imam John,
Not a
and then
problem.
we can put it together.
Absolutely. Just use your phone. Just use your phone. Put it on camera.
Your lecture is a long one.
Okay.
So the phone comes in, somebody calls them.
Okay.
Airplane mode is where it's recording.
No, my phone doesn't do that. Yeah. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salam ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Before I get into the discussion with you guys, I just want us to be clear about something. What have I told you from the time that you were born all the way up into this very moment right here? There's someone that has been trying very diligently to destroy your life. There's someone from the time that you were born, pushed out into this world, all the way up until right now, there's someone who has been watching you, plotting on you, waiting to destroy your life. How does that make you feel? Without even going into who it is. What's the mindset? What would be your mindset if you knew this?
Why me?
Why me? Okay. Why you? What else?
Prepare myself, in a sense.
Prepare yourself.
My guard up.
Okay. To be on guard. Okay.
What's his purpose doing that?
What's the end goal for him in doing that? All right, we all experience like haters. Like everybody know what a hater is?
Yes.
What's a hater? You say yes. What's a hater?
Oh, someone who they don't want to see you do good.
They don't want to see you do good. All right. Everybody agree? Anybody got any haters? Everybody has a hater in their life. If you're doing something positive, right, you got a hater in your life. Somebody who's sitting back watching you see what you do and can't stand the fact that you might have some level of success in what you do. This enemy that I'm talking about is none other than Shaitan. From the time that you were born all the way up until right now, he has been watching you, looking for your weaknesses, plotting to your demise. Not your physical demise, your death in terms of your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to sever that relationship between you and Allah. Right? You guys follow me? Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in the Quran, إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ هُوَ وَقَبِيلُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُ. The Shaitan, he watches you from a place where he can see you, but you can't see him. Him and his group, him and his party, they watch you from a place where they can see you, but you can't see them. And this is part of the reason why we fail, because if you don't know yourself and you don't know your enemy, you're going to lose every battle. But if you know yourself, you know your enemy, you know yourself, but you don't necessarily know your enemy, you're going to take as many losses as you do gains. But if you don't know your enemy and you don't know yourself, you will lose every single time. You guys follow me? So it's important for you to know yourself, what your weaknesses are, so that when you see Shaitan approaching you from the areas of your weaknesses, you're able to prepare yourself for that. Shaitan has an ultimate goal, and that is to sever your relationship with Allah. From the time that Allah told him to prostrate to Adam, he has had a vendetta against the human being. And there is no, this type of enemy, there's no negotiating with him. Shaitan is not going to negotiate. Even if you said to Shaitan, just leave me alone, I'll do whatever, he's still going to achieve his end goal. There's a verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَمَثَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِذْ قَالَ لِلْإِنسَانِ اكْفُرْ فَلَمَّا كَفَرَ قال إني بريء منكم إني أخاف الله. It's like Shaitan when he says to the human being, disbelieve. I want to expose this creature to you so you understand the nature of what you're dealing with. He said, it's like Shaitan when he says to the human being, disbelieve. And then when you disbelieve, the Shaitan says, I'm free from you. I fear Allah. So there's no negotiating with him. And Ibn Kathir mentions in his tafsir a story associated with that ayah. And this was a man from Bani Israel, from the Jewish tradition, who was a devout worshiper. And Shaitan wanted this guy so bad. So what did he do? Shaitan, he went and he possessed this woman. Devil possession is real. He possessed this woman, and then he came to the brothers of that woman in the form of a righteous man. And he says to the family of the girl, I know a scholar that can do ruqya, that can do incantation to remove the spirit that is in her. And he directed them to this particular righteous man. The whole while, Shaitan is just setting him up. This is what happens when you are not aware of yourself and you're not aware of your enemy. You overestimating yourself and underestimating your enemy. So he directs the family to this righteous man. The family says, we're going to leave our daughter with you. Is that a mistake?
Yes.
Mistake number one. We're going to leave our daughter with you for you to remove the devil that is inside of her, the jinn that she is possessed by. So every day he goes in and he recites some verses from the Quran trying to remove the jinn from the girl. And with each and every day that he goes in to go and remove the jinn from this girl, Shaitan is beautifying this girl to him. So each and every day she looks more beautiful and more beautiful and more beautiful. Right? You ever been in the classroom with a girl who you didn't consider cute? Right? And then after being in the classroom with her for so long, right? Maybe you went through 4th grade, 5th grade, and by 6th grade, this same girl that you wouldn't even sit next to, by 6th grade, she's gorgeous. Right? Any of you guys witnessed that? Okay. I have. That's real talk. I have. By the 6th grade, 7th grade, she looks very different. It's the same girl. But you don't realize Shaitan has been working on you from 4th grade. He's been working on you the whole time. So every day he goes in to recite some verses of Quran over this girl to remove the jinn. And every day Shaitan is beautifying. This is one of the ways that Shaitan gets you to fall into sin. يُزَيِّنُ لَهُمْ أَعْمَسُوءُ أَعْمَالِهِمْ. He beautifies your evil deeds to you. He makes it seem like it's not that big of a deal. It's not that bad. Right? And anytime someone says to you, it's not that serious, it's not that big of a deal, always be weary of people like that. So eventually, Shaitan whispers to this guy and he goes and he does the inevitable. And that is to sleep with this woman. Not only did he sleep with the woman, she ended up getting pregnant. Shaitan comes to him and says, I was the one who set this situation up for you. I possessed the woman. I directed her family members to you. I beautified the woman to you every day until eventually you slept with her. And now she's pregnant. If the community finds out, her family finds out, your reputation, you're done. I can get you out of this situation. The man says to Shaitan, what do I have to do? He said, usjud li, prostrate to me. That's all I want you to do. Make sujood to me one time, and I'll fix this whole situation for you. The man says, I would never prostrate to you. So be it. So Shaitan came back again because he constantly keeps coming back. And he says, when her brothers get back, everyone is going to find out. Prostrate to me and I can get you out of this situation. The man said, I'm not going to prostrate to you. He said, well, kill her and the baby and bury them to get you out of the situation. So what does he do? He kills the girl and the child, buries them. Shaitan goes to the family of the girl and says, the man that you left your sister with, he had relations with your sister and she got pregnant and he killed her and the baby. I can show you where both bodies are. And he took them to the both bodies and showed them where they were. When the brothers found out, they went and they got the guy and they strung him up and they were about to crucify him. Shaitan comes to him again and says to him, I can get you out of this situation. All you have to do is prostrate to me one time. What do you think he did? Absolutely. In an attempt to get out of this situation, he made sujood to Shaitan, and Shaitan said, you know what? I'm free from you. And they killed him anyway. What do you understand from this story? Story is a metaphor for man's relationship with Shaitan. What do you guys gather from this story? Let's pinpoint all of the things that went wrong in this story. Yes?
He prostrated to Shaitan.
Obviously, which is shirk. He prostrated to Shaitan, which immediately severed his tie between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because now you have taken Shaitan as your God, as your ilah. What else did he do wrong? What did he do wrong in this situation? He had relations with the woman. But before that, he let her in. Should you be alone with a woman?
No.
The Prophet ﷺ said, any man, yakhlu ma imra'a, that secludes himself from everyone else with a woman that is not his family member, strange woman, ajnabiyya, then the third party, thalithahuma shaitan, the third party that's there that you can't see is shaitan. This applies to whether you are on the phone with her, whether just you and her texting, whether just you and her DMing, direct messaging. It doesn't matter. As long as it's just you and her, Shaitan is the third party. Whether you're meeting up at McDonald's or wherever you're meeting up at school and you're together alone, in any capacity that you are alone with this girl, Shaitan is the third party. Always understand that. What else did he do wrong in this situation? So he let the girl in and stayed with him. That's number one. What else did he do wrong? So many loopholes in this story.
He didn't after all that happened, he didn't come clean to the brothers.
Instead of owning the wrong that he did, he still tried to wiggle his way out of the situation. One of the things that will make you a man, right, is to own your wrongs. When you do something wrong, own it. It's yours. It's going to make you a better person. There's nothing more cowardly than a person who does something wrong, and then once they get caught, they try to wiggle their way out of the wrong. So not only were you bold enough to do it, right? You were man enough to do it, but then you're not man enough to take the responsibility for doing it. If you do something wrong, own it. Just say, I did it. It's mine. I own it. I was wrong. We all make mistakes. But to do something wrong, be bold enough to do something wrong, and then to try to circumvent consequences by stuffing it off as somebody else's fault. This person did it. That person did it. No, just own it. It's mine. Because had he just come clean and said to the brothers, this is what I did. She's pregnant. Yeah, they probably would have been upset. Yeah, there probably would have been a fight. Maybe there would have been something worse than that. But at least you can die with honor knowing that, I didn't hide anything. It's mine. I own it. I did it. That's part of our religion, is to own the wrong that you've done. But there's people in life who will go to their grave with things that they just will never admit to. They will never own it. And that's not part of our religion. What makes you a man is to be responsible for your actions, for your speech. Everything that emanates from you, you own. It's yours. Those are your words. When you utter those words, the scholars, they have a phrase, إِنَّ الْكَلِمَةَ قَبْلَ أَن تَخْرُجْ تَمْلِكُهَا وَإِذَا خَرَجَتْ تَمْلِكُكَ. That before the word leaves your mouth, you own it. You control it. Once it leaves your mouth, it controls you. Because now you don't know how those words are going to come back and affect you. You don't. The Prophet ﷺ said, هَلْ يَكُبُّ النَّاسِ في النار على مناخرهم وعلى وجوههم إلا حصائد ألسنتهم. Is there anything else that topples people into the hellfire on their faces, on their necks, except the harvest of their tongue? Not necessarily what you say, but how what you say affects other people and how that is going to come back to you. Everything that comes from you, statement, action, emotion, feeling, everything that comes from you is yours. You own it. You guys following me? So why am I mentioning all of this? I'm mentioning all of this to segue into my discussion with you about marriage, temptation. Temptation is real. And a lot of times as your fathers, as there are only men here, as your fathers, sometimes we lose sight sometimes of the changing times and how temptations change over time. Things that we were tempted with as children are a lot different than the things that you guys are tempted with. When I was a kid, there was no internet. There was no such thing as an internet. We didn't have access to Pornhub and all of these other things that you guys have access to with a click of a button on your phone. We didn't have access to that. So as a result of that, temptations for us were a lot different than the temptations are from you. The moment your parent gives you a cell phone with internet access, you have complete access to the world. The good, the bad, the ugly. Which means that with that cell phone, you now become responsible because parents are not there to look over your shoulder to make sure you're not going on sites that you shouldn't be on. That now becomes an individual responsibility of yours. So with the changing of time comes the changing of different responsibilities. The most that we ever had as a responsibility is if you had a key, right? You wore your key around your neck and shoestring and you tucked it in your shirt and you made sure you didn't lose that key. If you had, two working parents and you had to come home after school, you had to make sure you had your key. And that was pretty much the greatest responsibility, right? To make sure that your room was clean and all of these other things. You guys are walking around with cell phones in your pocket. That comes with itself a huge responsibility. And part of being an adult, you guys are teenagers, you're going into adulthood. Part of being an adult, a responsible adult, is knowing the responsibilities that are on your shoulders and to be responsible with those things. You are going to be questioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything that you looked at. You're going to be questioned by Allah for everything that comes off of your tongue. Everything that came out of your mouth, you will be responsible for. Every action that you do, the angels on your right and your left are jotting it all down. You guys follow me? So that puts a huge responsibility on you. But there are temptations that you guys are exposed to. So let me hear from you guys. How many of you guys are in high school? Tons of temptation. All right? What are some of the temptations that you guys experience in high school? Share that with us so that we as your parents, we know.
Drugs.
Drugs. What kind of drugs? What is the temptation with drugs? People offering you drugs?
Yeah.
Or drugs are just available and you can get it? Both.
People offering you.
People offering you drugs. All right? This is my son, Muslim child. From the very beginning, I called the adhan in his ear. I separated him from his mother, cut his umbilical cord. Something I regret today, but nonetheless, it is what it is. There's temptation in high school, and the temptation is drugs. What does Islam, Zubair, what does Islam say about drugs?
That is bad for all.
It's bad. Bad in terms of your health or bad in terms of like haram?
Haram.
Haram, that it's impermissible for you to digest any type of intoxicant. The word khamr in Arabic is a generic phrase. It's general. It doesn't just mean alcohol. It means anything that intoxicates. The Prophet ﷺ said, Kullu muskirin khamrun. Every muskir, everything that intoxicates is called khamr. Be it marijuana, be it Molly, be it e-pills, be it alcohol, you name it. Anything that intoxicates your mind is called khamr. And this is for the genius Muslims out there. They smoke marijuana and say, well, it doesn't say it in the Quran, right? Where does it say marijuana is haram in the Quran? Well, if it's haram, then why would Allah grow it from the ground, right? Opiates come from the ground either. I don't see you sniffing heroin. I mean, the point is that don't circumvent by using your own logic of why this is haram. It's haram for the same reason that pork is haram. Number one, because Allah made it haram. That's what, and we say sami'na wa ata'na, we hear and we obey, and that's sufficient. And number two, because it interferes with your relationship with Allah. Right? So there's kullu muskirin khamrun wa kullu khamrin haramun. That everything that intoxicates is called khamr, and everything that is khamr is haram. You guys follow me? So don't let anybody come to you and say, well, there's no mention of marijuana in the Quran. Right? It's all haram. So temptations like drugs. All right? What else? Temptation, high school. What other temptations are in high school?
Women.
Women? There are women in high school? Or girls?
Both.
He said women. Women and girls in high school. Absolutely, because 12th graders are definitely women. They're grown women. I go to school, pick my son up. I'm seeing women. They're women. Trust me. What are the temptations with women in high school? How was that a temptation for you or any one of you as Muslim children going to high school? How is women?
I'm not in high school. So.
Okay, but how? But how would it be? How would it be a temptation?
I don't know.
That's a fair answer.
I'm not in high school, but I was 4 years ago.
4 years ago, okay.
Some of the things was doing group projects with girls, because you couldn't really tell your teacher that I can't do a group project with a girl.
Right.
Being sitting right next to a girl, and basically your classmates aren't segregated in like third world countries.
Right.
Girls and boys, so girls are everywhere, and I think that's probably like the most important aspect.
Okay. So hold on. Let me capitalize off of that. He said that the temptation of girls in school for Muslim men, for you young Muslim boys, the temptation is, number one, sometimes your teacher assigns a group project, right? And a group project has to be, and I remember doing my graduate degree in college, and I had to do a group project, and there was like only one other guy and 4 other girls. So I'm like, I mean, even in college, you can't escape it. So sometimes your teacher, your professor, whatever, puts you in a group, and in that group you have to work alongside women or girls. Sometimes the seating process in the classroom, sometimes you have to sit next to, like my son, he's in between 2 girls. I mean, go figure. I mean, it just happens that way sometimes. And that in itself is a temptation. So, for us as Muslim men to be aware of some of the things that our young boys are subject to, I'm hoping that this opens a greater discussion about things that, because I think that sometimes as leadership in the Muslim community, we kind of like don't really focus on those things. They're not really important in the grand scheme of community, when in fact there are, other temptations as it relates to girls.
Especially like warm weather, it becomes tough for us to lower our gaze because of the clothing that they wear and things like that.
Okay, so the clothing that they wear, sometimes, of course, spandex is the order of the day. So they come to school with spandex and a short t-shirt, and this woman is sitting next to you or sitting in front of you, and then sometimes things happen even in the classroom where, if she's suffering from low self-esteem or she needs some attention, then she'll dress in a certain way or act a certain way so she can receive the attention that she's looking for. And all of these things puts, the Muslim you guys at risk, puts you at risk. Other temptation.
I think you mentioned this before, is getting to high school from the same, starting at 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, the girl or the women, they become at that point in time. So it's the same scenario.
Or the familiarity. Right? They've seen you from 5th, 6th, 7th grade. By the time you're in 8th and 9th grade, you're on a different trajectory. You're trying to get more in tune with your religion, trying to take life a little bit more serious. Whereas this girl, in her mind, I've known you since the 3rd or 4th grade. So she comes, she puts her arm around you, she has a level of familiarity with you, which in itself can be a fitna for you. You guys agree? That sometimes, you know, you see her, hey, and she runs to give you a hug, and you're like, well, wait a minute, no, you know, and she's like, what's wrong? We've known each other since 5th grade. It's not a big deal. You know, and she minimalizes that as from her perspective, but from your perspective, you still have a certain, you know, Islamic etiquette or ethos to maintain. And you can't just give that away simply because you guys are familiar. You have to create boundaries for yourself. There's certain things that I cannot do with you. Although we might have been in the 2nd and 3rd grade and, you know, we had the same lunchbox and, you know, we skipped the class together and that was cool in the 2nd grade. We're in the 8th and 9th grade now. We cannot do that anymore. So you have to set the boundary. You can't expect other people, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, you cannot expect that they understand what your boundaries are. You have to be clear about what your boundaries are. You guys follow me? You guys agree with me? You agree with me? What happens when you don't set those boundaries for the girls that you are surrounded by?
It keep getting worse.
Huh?
It keep getting worse.
It keeps getting worse. When you don't set the boundary, it just keeps getting worse and worse. What were you going to say?
I was going to say it opens Pandora's box.
It opens Pandora's box. What is that?
It just opens these doors that not other things.
Leads to other things. Absolutely. As he said, it gets worse when you don't. And the same thing happens to us as adults, even at work, right? You start a new job, right? And the men that's on your job might be intermingling with women on the job, and that's what they do. You start the job and you're a practicing Muslim and you're trying to set a certain boundary, but you don't want to come in and, you know, you might have other Muslims that work there and they're kind of loose with women, so you don't want to come in as the super religious guy and, you know, show everybody else up. So you kind of just pace yourself. But if you don't set a certain boundaries, you don't set certain boundaries for yourself, the women that you are surrounded by, they are going to continue pushing the limits with you until you set the boundary. So it's very important from the very beginning that you create boundaries for yourself. You guys follow me? You don't have to be rigid. You don't have to say, I'm Muslim, I don't shake a woman's hands, I don't do this. No, but in a nice way. When a situation arises, you can kind of just say, hey, listen, you know, I wanted to say to you earlier, but I didn't want to embarrass you in front of everybody, but, you know, I am a Muslim and we're not allowed to do that. You know, I can't do that. You don't have to embarrass her in front of everybody, but you can pull her to the side and say, hey, listen, I didn't want to embarrass you in front of everybody, but I noticed, like, you put your arm around me when you came up. I'm Muslim and, you know, it's not permissible for me to engage with women like that, you know. And they respect that. What will actually happen is they will become your greatest advocate. They will begin to advocate for you. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that?
I highly disagree with you.
Hold on, before you disagree. No, stop. I said that they will become your greatest advocate. I'm going to come to you. I enjoy, wallahi, I enjoy engagement. What do I mean that they become your greatest advocate?
So if they have a friend that, you know, starts to talk about, oh, this guy didn't let me hug him or something like that, they'll be like, no, he doesn't let you hug him because it's sex and all that.
Girls will be your greatest advocate. They will go and tell other girls, nah, you can't engage with him like that. Nah, he's Muslim. Don't do that to him. They will become your advocates. Right? And that's what you want. So it's all based upon that first engagement with that first person. She now is going to tell everyone else to respect your boundaries. All right? But it has to be in a respectful manner. Because if you superimpose that on her and you disrespect her, she's going to become an advocate against you. Oh, he's gay. Don't put your arm on him. He's Muslim. You know, they don't touch women. They must be gay or something. Like, she's going to now do the opposite of what you want her to do, simply because of the way that you handle it. So, and it's never, in our religion, it's never a good thing to embarrass someone in front of everybody. You pull the person to the side and speak to the person one-on-one. And then you will develop a trust with that person because the person see that you at least considered my feelings and you didn't embarrass me in front of everybody. And to show loyalty to that and to repay you for that, they will advocate for you. He said he highly disagrees. Go ahead, why?
Because, like, a lot of girls, like, they're not really religious or anything. Like, I have a lot of friends.
Turn your camera towards him. Go ahead.
I do have female friends of my own, and obviously they see other guys who don't talk to other girls and stuff like, oh, he's gay, or oh,
Right.
something's up with him, you know.
And you can sit there and pull them aside like, hey, listen, don't touch me, this is my religion, whatever. But remember, these are the same people every day. They go to school, they dress however they want, showing everything off, and they don't care. And so what makes you think they're going to care at that moment,
Have you ever tried it?
But even if I did, I know that person well enough.
No, but you have to try it. First, I promise you. First, make dua. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Musa did, to remove the lisp from your tongue so that the person can understand what you're saying, right? Because sometimes we don't always articulate ourselves in the best way. We might mean well inside, but the way that it comes out is not actually what we intended. So sometimes we need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help in articulating ourselves so that it reaches the heart so the person understands how important it is to us. All right? And second of all, pulling the person to the side and say, hey, listen, I noticed that this is the relationship we have, but it would mean a lot to me if you respected this particular boundary or that boundary. And engage them, ask them, so, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? And get her take on it and see how she feels. Because maybe she needs more clarification. Maybe she says, well, I don't understand. Why? What is the problem? And then that opens the door for you to have a deeper discussion about it. And I mean, Allah will grant you tawfiq, but you can't say, this is the person that I go to school with every day,
But it's a norm, like in our school, to go to high school, to date people, to socialize with, other opposite sex and stuff like that.
Right.
So you're going against the norm. So
You're going against the norm.
people
Very
are
good.
gonna, well, what's up? What's wrong with you? Something's weird.
Okay, so how do
But then
you...
you're gonna feel isolated, and then you're gonna feel like, well, I guess I have to just, just right now. Maybe when I get older, I'll start falling in love.
That is the mentality. That is why I want you guys to engage. That is the problem right there. Did you guys hear what he said? No. He said that you're going against the norm. By setting these boundaries, you're going against the norm. And the norm is people come to high school, they develop boyfriend-girlfriend relationships and things like that. And so you as a Muslim saying, I don't touch people, I don't get down like that, people are going to look at you like you are strange. So it ultimately leads you to feel like, well, maybe I'll just do it now, and then later on, once I'm out of this environment, then I won't necessarily have to. But it's like I'm just going to engage with everybody else for the moment. And that is the problem with Muslim children, is that we always feel like we have to acquiesce, that we always feel like we have to just give in because that's what everybody else is doing. And when you do that, you lose your identity, because you are now living vicariously through others instead of establishing your identity first, and then let whoever, they got to work that out within themselves. That's not your problem, that's their problem. That's not my problem. If I say this is who I am and I establish my identity, that's your problem now to deal with that. When you look at, any, pop culture type of individual, rapper, singer, musician, whatever the case may be, they create identities around personalities, around names and individuals, and they go out into the world as that. And they don't care who likes it, who doesn't like it. That's just who they are. That's the personality that they created. And you have to learn how to be comfortable in your own skin as a Muslim. You're going to find yourself in some very awkward situations, even amongst Muslims. Sometimes I feel uncomfortable even amongst other Muslims. Sometimes you in a group setting and there are other Muslims and they're not necessarily practicing Muslims, and they look at you as the religious oddball, And as a student of knowledge, we get that all the time. We just want to be normal and hang out with everybody else. But when y'all see us coming, it's like, all right, let's change it. Here comes Shadeed Muhammad. It's like, damn, I'm just coming to kick it. I'm just, coming to be regular. And everybody just changes the tone of their language because, you stand out like a sore thumb. They can't really get comfortable around you. So I live with that on a day-to-day basis. And I'm sure every other imam or public figure kind of lives with the same thing. But you have to learn how to be comfortable in your own skin and let everybody else work out the details. That's not your problem. That's their problem. Now, you highly disagree? Uh-huh. here.
No, don't do that.
No, not that.
I work in office,
Uh-huh.
environment, not Muslim environment, Christian, Jew, and others. They celebrate their other holidays, they hug each other, their holiday comes Christmas, and they pass around their gifts. I have, because you said numerous, I have to set my boundaries ahead of time. I tell the secretary, my secretary, everybody in the office, please don't bother or don't go into the difficulty of, getting presents, because I don't celebrate it and I appreciate your thoughts. Now, this is not what I want to say here, but they do that, and they don't give me the present, I don't give them. They know what I say. But our receptionist knows when they have all that stuff, she doesn't hug, or she doesn't extend her hand. And she knows that I'm Muslim, I don't shake hands. And the beauty is here, that's what I want you young boys know this. When you believe what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered you to believe in to do, and you practice it like the Sheikh said, your help comes through the Arabic.
Absolutely.
They are everywhere. So this is secretary of my receptionist. People come to me in my office, man and woman. Sometimes women. He already tells them, please do not extend your hand
Absolutely.
to shake his master.
Absolutely.
So, see, I didn't do that. So you guys have to be comfortable, whether it's your classmates, or your peers, or anybody, who you are pleasing and who you are displeasing. You say, him, don't worry about it. You have him, you don't have to worry about anything else.
Absolutely. People will become your greatest advocates. Absolutely. Once we establish that identity and those boundaries, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will work everything else out for you.
And if I may, this will also extend within the family, because many of us here are reverts, and you're going to have first cousins who, in my case, were treated like sisters
Absolutely.
growing up. And we have a number of Muslims in the family now, and we have to say to them, don't do that anymore. Same thing. And guess what? I'm as guilty as all of you in dealing with that situation. So just keep in mind, these things he's saying are going to extend to your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's pretty much, we kind of helped to solve that, and that is for you guys to create boundaries for yourself. And as the brother said, don't wait until something happens and then say, oh, no, I don't get down like that. Because that's kind of very abrupt, that's right there on the spot. And people don't usually handle on the spot correction. But when you when you be proactive and you say ahead of time, hey, I just want everybody to know, when you come into a classroom, you start in September, the first day of school, people in your class should already know that you're Muslim. How many of you guys have kind of like assimilated and nobody in your class knows you're Muslim? Nobody in your class knows you're Muslim. Okay. So does nobody know that you're Muslim in the classroom because you didn't say anything to anybody, or you're trying to hide it, or you just didn't feel the need to tell anybody? Okay. Do you think you should kind of, you don't have to stand up in front of the class and say, hey, everybody, I'm Muslim. But how would you go about letting the people in your classroom, individually or collectively know that you're Muslim? How would that happen? Pull them one-on-one. So you're going to tell everybody, 22 people in your classroom, you're going to pull them out one by one and tell everybody you're Muslim? I can give you an easier way to do that. What would be an easier way to do that?
Well, usually, people know I'm Muslim. When you have celebrations or something in the class, people like to bring food, and I say please don't bring pork or anything because I can't eat that.
Okay.
They're like, oh, okay, I understand.
Okay, that's one way. I'm going to give you guys a very easy, cool way to let everybody in your classroom know that you're Muslim.
Say salam.
To say assalamu alaikum. And this is the thing. Now that you say that, you can have a sense of humor with your personality. If your personality calls for that. Like if you're the type of person that walk in the classroom and say assalamu alaikum, everybody look at you like, but you don't have to be so serious with your religion. It doesn't have to be like so rigid with the religion. Our job is to make people feel comfortable with Islam. You know, we don't have to say, well, I'm Muslim, don't bring me any pork, right? Why does every time people know that we're Muslim, it has to be in relation to some do or don't in our religion, right? Why can't we just introduce Islam? What would be a cool way, and you guys are millennials, you know, coming up in this, you know, internet age, what would be a cool way to introduce the fact that you're a Muslim to your classroom?
Well, for me personally at work, I would leave every Friday for Jummah, and then I would come back, and eventually they caught on that I was leaving at a certain time, right? But they didn't know I was Muslim before that. So then they asked, like, why do you always leave at this certain time, they didn't come back at a certain time? And I was like, oh, because I have to go pray in my mosque. So then that's when they started asking questions like, oh, so is that where you, like, I had a beard longer than this before, so then like they would just like ask me all the questions about that and then all this other stuff. So it's kind of just opened doors to them asking questions.
Okay, so even if you begin to incorporate some like Islamic dress, right? You're in high school, you start growing a beard. Instead of cutting your beard, letting it grow. You know, outlining the beard, so and then people seeing you like, well, why do you have a beard? Why are you having facial hair? You know, and you get a chance. They open a door. You get a chance to explain. You know, if you some days, you know, if you're having multicultural day or something like that, and you come in with a thobe on, and people looking at you like, oh, you're Muslim? It's like, yeah, I'm Muslim. That's you introducing Islam, and it doesn't have anything to do with a do or don't. Don't bring me any presents because I'm Muslim. Don't bring any pork because I'm Muslim. You know what I mean? You see how, you know, we're introducing Islam in terms of do's and don'ts instead of in a healthy way where people can actually be comfortable with the fact that you are Muslim.
I'm in the workforce now, but I just thought for a moment it would be important to mention to you guys in school still how many people that I went to school with that are Muslim. That's also happening.
They were not Muslim when you were in high school, and now they are.
People that you look at now getting married, women wear hijab, you say, not her, subhanAllah. That the person you would never expect is a Muslim and married before you.
Right. No, real talk. Real talk.
You can't fear them. They're figuring their life out, and half of them aren't. Just like we're trying to figure out at that age that you guys are at. They're not set in their ways. They're open to hearing about learning anything, just like we all are. And you'll be surprised at how many become Muslim after school.
Ahsant. Excellent point. Excellent point. Did you hear what he said? He said they, non-Muslims that you go to school with, high school with right now, a lot of them are not set in stone. A lot of them are still trying to figure their lives out, just like you're trying to figure it out. You got a head start on the game because at least you know. You know, you were raised Muslim. You born and raised Muslim. Some of your parents might have converted to Islam, but at least you have a trajectory placed in front of you. Pray 5 times a day. Fast the month of Ramadan. The Quran is on a shelf, on your bookshelf in your living room. You at least have a trajectory. So you got a head start. And as he said, a lot of the people he went to school with, you look now, a few years later, they've already converted to Islam. They've already converted to Islam. And the sad thing is that some of them were in the classroom with people who were Muslim, who never said anything to them about Islam. And then they became Muslim and converted to Islam at the hands of somebody else. Why wouldn't we want to capitalize off of that? Why wouldn't we want to pull 1 or 2 people to the side and say, hey, listen, what do you know about Islam? Can you want to come to the mosque with me on Friday? My dad comes to pick me up. And fathers, we should pick our children up. We should pick our boys up at least 1 or 2 Fridays out of a month. You know what I mean? We don't want them to miss school on a regular basis like that. But to pick your son up, it's Jumu'ah and I'm coming to get you early. And to say to one of your friends, talk to his mom and say, hey, listen, or his dad and say, hey, listen, my father's taking me to Jumu'ah today. You want to come with me? I got to ask my mom, I got to ask my dad and see if they're okay with that. And introduce them to Islam. And when they become Muslim later on, they can always say that I had a friend in my classroom who was Muslim and his dad used to take him to Jumu'ah. So I went to Jumu'ah with him one day and I never forgot the feeling that I felt or what I saw. And later on, that contributed to them becoming Muslim later on. And you had a hand in that. Wa alaikum salam.
His father was my roommate in college.
When I took my Shahada, I was so excited. I was emotional about it because his family, all his brothers and sisters are Muslim. His older brother's son is a Hafiz of Quran.
MashaAllah.
And because he said something to his father, he's sitting here and he's practicing it today.
MashaAllah. So his father was Muslim in college with you, or wasn't?
He was my roommate, and when I took my Shahada, I mentioned to him about Islam.
And he wasn't Muslim?
And he wasn't Muslim.
SubhanAllah.
And he became Muslim, his wife became Muslim, and his mother became Muslim.
And now his son is sitting here right now.
His son is sitting here.
SubhanAllah. You guys see that? Just a mention. Just a mention. I'll share something with you since we on that note. My first introduction to Islam, unfortunately, I had a rough upbringing. But I was in juvie, right? I was in the Essex County Youth House. I was in the Essex County Youth House. I was 15. I was 15 at the time. And one day, I was going in the bathroom. We were getting ready to line up to go down to the lunchroom, right? We all got our jumpsuits on. You're incarcerated. You're locked up. And I seen one of the inmates. He had a prayer rug under his arm. I didn't know what it was. I had never seen anything like that. I grew up as a Christian. I didn't have my only seeing Islam in my community was the Nation of Islam. I never saw like Sunni Muslims. We saw people with bow ties. I grew up in East Orange, New Jersey. I didn't really see in the early 80s, I didn't see Sunni Muslims. All right, and I saw the prayer rug under his arm, and I saw, at the time he was making wudu. I didn't know what it was. I just saw him washing his arms. And I'm sitting there looking at him. I'm like, yo, dude, what are you doing? And he said, I'm getting ready for prayer. I was like, well, what prayer is that? I said, I'm Christian. We don't do that for prayer. He said, well, I'm Muslim. I said, well, oh, like the guys with the bow tie and stuff, Farrakhan and them. He was like, no, I'm Sunni Muslim, real Muslims. I'm like, okay, well, this is foreign to me. I've never seen anything like this in my life. So I said, well, can I pray with you? He was like, yeah, but you gotta wash your body up like I'm doing mine. So he went through the whole process of wudu, and I'm like, wow, intrigued. So we go into the room, the cell door was open, we go in, and I stand next to him, and I pray with him. He's reciting Al-Fatiha in Arabic. After the prayer was over, I was like, that wasn't English, what were you saying? He said, that's called Al-Fatiha. You gotta recite that in order to pray. So I was like, all right, well, can you write that down for me so the next time I pray with you? He was like, the next time you pray with me? I said, yeah, I want to do that again. Write it down for me so that I can recite it. And he wrote it down on a piece of paper, 7 lines, Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, to the end of it. Wrote it down in the English transliteration. 7 lines, wrote it down for me. I went back to my cell that night. I memorized it. I memorized Al-Fatiha. The very next day, he went to pray again, and I prayed with him. Was able to make out everything he was saying. Nonetheless, I was released, whatever the case may be. Years went by until I took my Shahada at 20 years old. I was incarcerated as an adult. Mujahid Salam, that was just here on the Musalla, that was my imam. He was the chaplain at the prison. Yardville University. Garden State University, right? He was the chaplain. That was my first imam. SubhanAllah. And the brother who reintroduced me to Islam, mind you, I hadn't heard or seen anything about Islam since that time. Fast forward 5 years later, I'm 20 years old, and a friend of mine introduces me to Malcolm X's autobiography. I read it a couple times. He's like, you need to come down to the mosque. Mujahid Salam was the imam at the time. He's down there giving his lectures, and I'm like, this is really interesting. Now, mind you, I already knew. Eventually, I took my Shahada. Beautiful thing. When I took my Shahada, the brother said, you got to learn Al-Fatiha. I said, I already knew it. He's like, how did you know Al-Fatiha? I said, when I was incarcerated as a juvenile, I never forgot Al-Fatiha. I never forgot it. The day that I took my Shahada, I already knew Al-Fatiha. I never forgot it. And this was all because of something somebody did in my presence that attracted my attention. So while we as Muslims work very hard to hide the fact that we're Muslim because we're embarrassed or we're ashamed, you would be amazed at how many people's attention you would attract if you would just be Muslim. Just be Muslim. Just do what you enjoy doing of your religion. Just be in your element. Just be who you are and not try to hide it. And you will be amazed at how Allah will work through you. Allah will work through you. You guys follow me? Yes.
I want to share something. This is a story I want to share when I became Muslim. How I came about accepting Islam and coming into Islam. Growing up and being raised in New York, you learn about the Nation of Islam, you see them. And anyway, going back, I was working in the Postal Service. This was back in 1983, around that time. I was working with this brother. He and I became very good friends. He never told me he was Muslim, never wore kufi, anything like that. He was just a regular brother. He and I became very good friends. I became very close with him. It was just something about him that I liked. His demeanor, everything depicted something real positive, okay? So we was working in the postal. I was a mail handler. So we was moving magazine pallets of books and everything. And back then they had these magazines where men used to look at, okay? So now, a lot of guys, we was working on the belt, breaking up the mail, breaking up the bundles, and we was looking at the magazines like, oh man. He turned and walked away. Now, he was a very good friend of mine. So when he turned and walked away, I felt like somebody stabbed me in my heart. I felt hurt because I'm looking at he turned and walked away, and I said, yo, is everything okay? He said, I'm Muslim, I don't look at magazines like that. And that was my word right there. I followed him around like a little puppy. I ended up taking my Shahada, and alhamdulillah, it's been forward since then. But it was because of his demeanor that I was attracted to. Okay, so, you young guys in school, I'm old enough to be your grandfather. I ain't gonna tell you my age. I'm old enough to be your grandfather. But I'm saying to you, please, take heed. Take heed. It's about your demeanor, your character, what you're showing people. If you show them good things, they will see that. They will focus on that. If you show them something else, they'll focus on that as well.
Absolutely. So I think that we kind of discussed those things. The last thing that I wanted to discuss with you guys is marriage and how important marriage is. Someone looking from where I'm standing might say that speaking to you guys at this phase or stage in your life, speaking to you guys about marriage might be a little inappropriate or a little premature. The Prophet ﷺ, he never neglected to address issues that were related to social issues related to the young men in his community. We're all famous. We're all familiar with the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ya ma'shar al-shabab, man istata'a minkum al-ba'a falyatazawwaj, فإنه أغض للبصر وأحسن للفرج ومن لم يستطيع فعليه بالصوم فإنه له وجاء." The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ya ma'shar al-shabab, O group of young men." So you can see his address is not to the elders in the community, it's to the young men in the community. He said, "Oh, you group of young men, shabab." He said, "Whoever from amongst you has the ability to get married, then let him do so. It will help you to lower your gaze, and it will help you to protect your private area, to protect your chastity. And whoever from amongst you does not have the ability to get married, then let him fast, because fasting will help to regulate the desire." All right? The word he used was castration, but the meaning, the ma'ana, the meaning he was trying to convey is that by fasting, you will learn how to regulate that desire. That desire, you guys in your early teenage, mid-teenage years, you're going through a change of testosterone. This is what creates the hair under your arms, the hair on your chin, the mustache, and the attitudes that you have with your parents. All of that. Testosterone is the culprit. Most importantly, the desire to be with the opposite sex is also enhanced by the testosterone. So in this phase of your life, to have a discussion with you about the importance of marriage is, not inappropriate by any stretch of the means. You guys should be looking forward. The double standard in our community, in the Muslim community, is that we prep women from the very beginning to be mothers. We buy them doll babies, houses, right? All of this are subliminals that we are giving them yay high, preparing them to be mothers, to be domestic. And with the boys, it's like, oh, we don't need to talk about them until he graduates from college, then we'll open a discussion about marriage. And why is it that we can prep our daughters to be, somebody's mother, somebody's wife, from, very young, as early as 4 or 5 years old? But we don't talk to our boys about marriage and about relationships until they're 25. So that means that the girls have like a 20-year gap on you guys. There's a 20-year head start that girls have over boys, which is one of the reasons why girls in your age bracket don't want to mess with guys in your age bracket. They want older guys, right? I remember going to school, the girls always bragging about being with, high school guys or college guys, right? Because they considered the guys in their age bracket to be too immature. And in fact, we are. So by the time the woman is 20, 21, 22, she's ready to get married, in most instances. Not all the time. There's some that wait until they're 40, right? And they got the picket fence, the house, and the dog, and, no babies. And then they're looking for, somebody to, be a part of that. But then there's some who at 21, 22, 23, they already have their lives planned out in front of them, how they see themselves in the next couple of years, while we are just still twiddling our thumbs as men trying to figure it out where we belong. It's very important that we make sure that we prep you guys to be husbands, to be responsible, to be men, right? To be the people that are going to be inheritors. Inheritance is part of our religion. When we die, we're passing our money, our wealth, our businesses on to you guys. And we want you guys to be mature. Allah says, "La tu'tu sufaha amwalakum." Don't give the ignorant and the immature, right? Your money, the irresponsible, your money. The money that we have given you for your sustenance. So we're, as men, passing our wealth and our, all of what we have, our business, our entrepreneurial, endeavors, passing that down to you. We want to prep you guys and make sure that you're prepared to take on that responsibility. It's not just about marriage, because marriage is only one component. There are tons of other things that come along with you guys being mature and being responsible, right? So this discussion is very important. In the Islamic community, it seems like being single is cool. There's nothing cool about being single. Single men and single women are a risk to our community. They put our communities at risk. How? How does being single put our communities at risk? How are single people a threat to the Islamic community?
Leads to fornication.
Okay, it opens the door for fornication. We are at risk. When a young guy is, feeling himself and he's looking for someone to share that emotion with him, then he goes and picks off one of our daughters. They're vulnerable. They have the same emotions and feelings, but they know how to contain themselves. Whereas the boys, they struggle with that. So they go and they pick off one of our daughters and then takes her virginity or gets her pregnant. And now we have to deal with that because you don't have no responsibility anyway. So once you do that, it's off to the next person. And then we're stuck dealing with that. She's heartbroken. She lost her virginity in a manner that is displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we all have to bear that. While you move on to the next victim and do you. That puts how else does being single is a threat to our community?
Not procreate.
Not procreating. Very good. The whole purpose, one of the main purposes of marriage is to procreate, to bring more Muslim children into our community. There's a phrase that I like to use all the time, and that is, every dua Allah answers is through the womb of a woman. Every dua that we make, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to that dua through the womb of a woman in our community. We make dua that Allah, send us someone that will take our community here, and one of our daughters, one of our mothers, they give birth to a child and is raised in the Muslim community that takes us there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers the dua through the womb of the mother. And we're all looking for righteous children. How else is righteous children pushed out into the Muslim community except through the vehicle of our women? She is the vessel by which this righteous child. A beautiful story, and I'm not going to hold you guys. Umar bin al-Khattab. Everybody is aware of Umar, right? So one occasion, Umar, when he was the Khalifa, he was walking with some of his companions. And he had issued a decree that there was no more mixing milk with water. At that time, they were mixing the leban bil ma. We translate it as milk, but it's not actually milk. It's like a yogurt, right? But they were mixing it with water so that they could make more, similar to what they do now. It's just genetically modified today. It's not mixed with water. Now it's mixed with other harmful chemicals. So you're thinking that you're eating a chicken McNugget. It's not chicken. It's a McNugget, but it's not chicken. I'm dead serious. I'm keeping it 100 with you. It's not chicken. All right? So they were mixing the milk with water. Umar issued a decree that there should be no more mixing milk with water. Leave it organic. Leave it pure as it is. So he come across a village where a mother and her daughter is having a conversation. So the mother says to the daughter, take the leban, take the milk and mix it with water. The daughter says to the mother, but didn't you hear the decree that Amir al-Mu'mineen, the leader of the believers, Umar bin al-Khattab, issued earlier? And the mother says to the daughter, well, Umar bin al-Khattab is not here. So the daughter says to the mother, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is here. Umar sitting there listening to the conversation. So Umar tells one of his companions, go back tomorrow and find out who the man of that house is. Right? Find out who the man of that house is. The next day, his companion went to find out that the mother wasn't married, nor was the daughter. There was no man in the house. Hence the fact they're mixing milk with water to make more money for the family. You see what happens when there's no man to be responsible, to take on that responsibility? It puts women in very, awkward, situations. Right, where they have to do what is necessary for them to do because of the absence of the man. So he came back and he told Umar, there's no man available. The daughter is not married, nor is the mother. Umar was intrigued by the daughter's response. Now, although Umar is not here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is here. So Umar gathered his sons, Abdullah ibn Umar, Asim, all of them. And he asked them, which one of you is looking for marriage? Which one of you are looking for marriage? I have a righteous woman I want to marry you to. So Abdullah ibn Umar said, I have no desire for another wife. And Umar said, if it wasn't for the fact that I already had 4 wives, I would marry her myself. Because those were men during that time. Now, I'm not advocating for polygyny. I'm just telling you that the only one of the Khulafa al-Rashideen that only had 1 wife was Uthman. Even Ali was trying to marry another wife until the Prophet intervened. These were men. And they weren't marrying just to say they got many wives, but they were being responsible with their community. Because being single in the community, it creates a vulnerability. It's a weakness in our community when you got a whole bunch of single men and women walking around the community. And they wanted to fortify the Islamic community by making sure that the men take on their share of responsibility. So instead of walking around with $500 Gucci belts and Benzes and things like this, they saw women in the community that were out without spouses, and they stepped up to the plate and they took the responsibility. Well, we don't have that today in many of our communities. We rather live in big, plush, beautiful houses, live in the American dream, while there's single sisters in our community that will probably never get married. And we're okay with that. We sleep well at night with that on our minds. That's okay. Nonetheless, these men, they wanted to make sure that there was no weakness in the community. So Umar said, which one of you guys are looking to get married? None of them, except Asim ibn Umar. He said, I'll marry her. Umar married that woman to his son Asim. Umar's son and that woman gave birth to a daughter. And that daughter got married, Umar's granddaughter, got married to another man, and they gave birth to one of the greatest imams that this ummah has ever seen. He was known as the Khalifa al-Khamisa, the 5th Khalifa. Who was he? Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. Every dua is answered through the womb of a mother. Umar bin Abdulaziz was the great-grandson of Umar bin al-Khattab, who he married his son to this righteous woman, and generations later, they gave birth to one of the greatest imams, the greatest khalifas of the greatest imams of our ummah, Umar ibn Abdulaziz. Go back and read his biography. It said that if there was going to be another khalifa after Ali, it would have been Umar ibn Abdulaziz. He was one of the very few who was able to gather between the politics and the Sharia of Islam and merge them together. He was a scholar and he was a politician. Merge both of them. So the point that I'm making is that by a man marrying his son to a woman, pushing his children in that direction, there are great things that can happen as a result of that. You know, so fathers having those discussions with your sons, you guys open a discussion with your parents. I don't know, you guys afraid to open a discussion about marriage and women and things like that with your parents? Huh? Yes? Okay, so how can we soften that blow? How can we change that? How can we change that? That narrative has to change. You shouldn't be afraid. My son don't want to talk to me. There's a difference. When I try to open that conversation, he's like, man, Dad, I'm not having that conversation with you. That's a different thing. I'm probing, I'm pushing, I want to get it out. He's uncomfortable. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about where you are afraid to talk to your parents about, you know, at least your fathers about these things.
I just want to point you feel all this like cremation of women and everything at the workplace, in the school, everything like that. The whole system has a fit now, right? It's like you have the kids getting pregnant, this and that. They're profiting off that. People make money.
Yeah, but that's not really in our hands. This is the environment that we live in. I mean, you have a choice to take your family and relocate to an area where it's segregated, but even that creates its own set of problems. Segregated societies, without mentioning any names, even in the Arab world, they're dealing with their own set of problems as a result of the segregated society. Like girl-on-girl relationship, boy-on-boy relationship. Every time the boys go, they always got to be a bunch of boys. That in itself creates, and I'm not saying that that's not the ideal situation, but everything should be, everything should be, you know, looked at based upon its condition, its circumstance. But just because we segregate and separate male and female doesn't mean all of our problems are going to go away. We might actually be creating new problems. And all those things. I mean, when you look at the Prophet ﷺ's community, was it segregated? On the Musalla floor, the women prayed right behind the men. And mind you, a scholar or someone of knowledge might say, well, that was the community of the Prophet. They were righteous or whatever the case may be. There were still incidents of zina. There were still incidents of fornication, still incidents of adultery. There were still incidents of these things happening, those with what we have, you know, in hopes that we are creating a balanced generation of children. We strike that balance, but we don't really control that environment, you know. Even in Islamic school, right? I've worked at a few Islamic schools, right, where the girls are separated from the boys. What happens is, it's like Adam with the tree, right? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the human being desires what he can't have. So sometimes when you segregate, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, perhaps there were many trees in Jannah. Perhaps if Allah had not told Adam not to eat from this tree, maybe he would have never even desired the tree to begin with. But man desires what he can't have. So what happens in the Islamic school is when you put the girls on one side, the boys on another side, you are creating the desire. You're creating the desire. So it's a double-edged sword, and you gotta choose your separation of the sexes. There's nothing, you know. There's no utopia in that. Yes. Wa alaikum salam.
Yeah, you talk about a sensitive issue during your comments about polygamy. You know, I know the situation we find ourselves in, the difficult thing to even talk about. But we have situation that needs to be addressed within our community. So, what are your suggestions in terms of addressing some of the problems we are facing? Because like you said, we have sisters who, for some reason they want to get married, but because of situation, it's not just possible for them. And we have brothers who can help some of the situation, but you know, it has the discussion has to start somewhere. What are your suggestions, or what's the recommendation you can give out?
I actually have a book coming out. Great segue. And this was not planned. We didn't plan this. I actually have a book coming out. It's called The Revolution of Love, a man's perspective on loving two women in a polygynous relationship, a polygynous marriage. That's the title of the book. And the book, inshallah ta'ala, will be released on April 14th. The book will be available. If you would like to pre-order the book, you can go to my Facebook page and you can pre-order the book. All right? And in that book is 10 chapters from 1 to 10. I'm dealing with all of the psychological, the history of polygyny, where it comes from, because this predates Islam. Islam didn't create this. Islam just came to regulate it. This was something that was already going on before Islam. Islam just came to put certain restrictions and regulations on that. And part of that is the concept, the whole concept of polygyny is so that every woman in a society where the female to male ratio is disproportionate, she has an opportunity for marriage. All right. If we said that marriage was only monogamy, one man, one woman, and women, as it stands to date, is probably 5 women to every 1 man in America right now, then that means that there will be an influx of women that will never get married. And we're okay with that. This is what creates infidelity. This is what creates extramarital relations, because you have all of these single women, these men are married, and then they're surrounded by all of these women that are not married. You know, the Prophet ﷺ, he was an advocate of marriage in his community. Many people got married off of the advocacy of the Prophet ﷺ. Julaybib said to the Prophet, nobody will marry me. So he sent him to one of his companions from the Ansar, said, tell him, I sent you, and to marry his daughter to you. Right? Zainab and Zayd. Zainab, right, the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, she wanted to get married. And she sent her daughter Hamna to the Prophet to ask, to take shura, who should I marry? She said, all these men from Quraysh is asking for my hand in marriage. And the Prophet ﷺ said, why don't she marry someone that would teach her the book of her Lord and the sunnah of her Prophet? She said, who? He said, Zayd ibn Haritha. She married Zayd. The marriage didn't last long, but who's to say that Zayd would have gotten married had the Prophet ﷺ not advocated? There were many situations the Prophet was responsible. Even the hadith in Sahih Bukhari, when the woman came and she said to the Prophet, do you have any desire to marry me? The Prophet looked up and down and then turned away as an indication of no. The other man said, marry her to me, O Messenger of Allah, I'll marry her. The Prophet said, well, what do you have? He said, I don't have anything. He said, go find something, even if it's a ring made out of metal. Go find something out of iron. Go with your mom. Right? And he eventually married the man. He said, I only have what I memorized of the Quran. The Prophet asked him, how much do you have of the Quran? He said, I memorized such and such surah. He said, I marry you to the woman for what you have memorized of the Quran. He was an advocate for people getting married in his community. And I think that, this is something that needs to happen. Yes. Wa alaikum salam.
How does that actually work with the separation? Do you try to mix the girls in with guys? Is that normal how it works? Is there a problem with that being mixed, working on a particular project when you know you're going to have to go to the library or whatever,
So you're asking in terms of the Islamic school separating the sexes, right? And then when they leave the school, they go and they intermingle with other women outside of school. It necessitates you. Wallahu a'lam, man. Like I said, there's no ideal situation. We have to pick and choose which problems that we're going to be willing to deal with. But each one comes with their set of issues. Separation of, as I said, there's no utopia in separating the sexes. Boys over here on one end of the school, girls over here on the other end of the school. Sometimes that in itself creates the desire. Sometimes you can put male and female in the same class and they don't even want to talk to each other. They sit on opposite sides of the room. But when you say you guys over here and you guys over here, and you know, you're like the salt water and fresh water two should never meet, you're creating a desire, because now it's like, well, what's over there? You know? Very good.
Because, I mean, when they leave the school, you leave the society, you leave an environment that's totally opposed to what that environment is.
Got you. So, question for you guys. Islamically, is it permissible for you to talk to a woman for the opposite sex? Talk to a woman that is not your family member? Like, are you just like in class and you just like a mute? You're not talking to any woman in the classroom and you just stay to yourself? Is that the ideal approach to Islam? Or is there a more flexible understanding?
Like on a professional level, I think they're allowed there.
On a professional level? What's a professional level?
So like school, work, even like college, like clubs and stuff like that, if you guys need to work together, then it's okay. But also there's, once you notice the conversation going into a different direction, that's when you can kind of like, oh, stop, all right, let's go back on track.
Okay. You highly disagree, or you're okay with that?
No, I agree. Because today, I was at the masjid, I was talking with the children. And this girl came up to me, she's audio with an iPod. And usually I don't talk to the girls there and stuff, because she had her job on and everything. I was like, no, I'm good, thank you, and that was it. I tried to keep it short, sweet, simple.
Right.
Because I don't know. I don't want to ask how are you and all that other stuff. I just want to,
But that was professional. That was professional. So, you know, just the fact that you guys got that professional capacity mentality is a good thing. Now,
I got a question in reference to what you said earlier about the identity that they need to build for themselves. What do you suggest? How can they train themselves on what techniques can they implement to like apply, like when they're going out with their friends that they know may be haram or halal? How can they differentiate what to do with themselves, not to put themselves in a bad situation before it happens? What technique can they use?
let's hear from them. These seem to be like good Muslim children. You guys seem to be good dudes. Can you answer his question? Yeah, you. Yeah, you. What's your name, brother?
Sameem.
Huh?
Sameem.
Sameem. How would you answer his question? He said, how can, in terms of the Islamic identity piece, how can our children going out with friends or whatever the case may be, and of course, if you're with a group of friends, not all of them are on the same trajectory in terms of good behavior, bad behavior. They're different. But how do our children develop a system where they can differentiate, you know, what situations they should be in and what situations they shouldn't be in? So I said, let them answer. Understand something, millennial children are highly intelligent. They are smart kids, man. I want to hear, how would you respond to that?
Well, first I would say to avoid trouble, like, you wouldn't go into a club and just like be shocked when you meet girls and stuff like that. So, like even with the movies, like I know people go to the movies, so just with your guy friends, go there and sit in your own area. That's usually what happens.
He said if you go into a club, don't be shocked when you see girls. No, it makes a lot of sense. That's genius. That's genius.
You knew before you walked in.
Right, exactly. Meaning, don't put yourself in a situation and then get shocked when you're confronted with something that is haram, that you realize at that moment the light bulb goes off. I shouldn't be here, right? You knew before you walked through that door that you shouldn't have been there. That's genius, pure genius. Don't go into a club and be shocked when you see girls. I love it. That's something Shakespeare should have.
How are you guys preparing yourselves before that happens? That's what I want to know.
What is the preparation that you guys are doing so that you avoid those situations?
I would say start at the root cause of the problem. Obviously, the people you're around with are okay with, you know, such and such. Just cut them out, and then find people who are okay with, you know, keeping it halal.
Find people who share your values. Values is the thing that is going to be the determining factor whether you do or you don't. What your value system is. If your value system tells you this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and that's what you base your life on, then those are the type of people that you are going to attract. You attract people based upon your value. People watch you. They see how you dress, they see how you talk, they see how you move, and all of those things are centered around your values. And those are usually the people that you will attract to you. And in addition to your personality, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-arwah junud mujannada, that the souls are like united soldiers, Those that have an affinity to one another, they will unite, and those that don't, they're going to separate. So sometimes your personality is going to attract a certain person to you. So be aware of the signals that you are giving. You know, sometimes there's silent signals. You're not even aware of it, just by the way that you dress. I come today, I have on an Adidas, you know, what is the signal I'm sending to you? I knew I was coming here. I knew there was going to be some young guys here. I wasn't going to show up in my usual, you know, blazer, you know. This is a different type of crowd, different type of... So what message am I sending to you guys coming here looking like this? I'm relaxed, I'm young. Come on, keep them coming. I'm enjoying that, keep them coming. I knew exactly the type of gathering I was coming to, so I dressed appropriate. I wanted you guys to feel comfortable. I wanted you guys to see me in a different element, so that you would kind of let your guard down, so we could have those conversations, right? And then Imam John standing there, and you kind of like a little uncomfortable. You know? Go!
You get a little closer. Yeah, so you guys wrapped up.
But, you know, alhamdulillah, man, like, let me tell, fathers, before we go, let me just tell you something. One of the things, I have my issues with millennials. One of the things I notice about them, especially the younger ones, they are highly intelligent people. We don't give them a lot of credit. They are highly intelligent. Sometimes, instead of telling them what they should be doing, ask them, what do they think a better approach should be? And hear them out. What he said was genius, man. Very simple. He didn't have to say any more. He said, don't walk into a club and then get shocked when you see women. That is genius, man. These kids are highly intelligent, and sometimes I think we don't give them the credit that they deserve. They might not be the picture-perfect Muslim, pray 5 times a day with a throw above the ankle type of children that we envision them to be. But their, you know, gravitational, you know, pull towards the religion is going to be at their own pace based upon their experience with Islam. They're having a different experience with Islam than many of us are having. We're 2 separate entities having 2 separate experiences with the same thing. It's all Islam. It's like 2 people in a marriage. 2 people in a marriage. They're in the same marriage. She's having one experience, he's having a totally different experience. This is how, you know, reminiscent of parents and their children with Islam. We're having one experience with the religion. We're maturing in certain areas of our lives, and our connection to the religion is becoming a little more deep, a little more rooted, right? You know, in spirituality, because we're getting older. And our children are having another experience with Islam. But it's all relevant. It's all relevant. It's all relative, excuse me. So, inshallah ta'ala, I just want to say, you know, guys, thank you for coming out, spending some time with us. Thank you for sharing, you know, the information that you guys shared. And hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, this will open up a discussion, you know, a larger discussion that you guys can have on a regular basis. You have 2 dynamic, you know, leaders in the community, Imam Rashid, Imam John, you know, inshallah ta'ala, that are a lot closer to your age. They probably closer to your age and closer to my age. You know, I don't know, I got a lot of gray hair. It's high under there. Nonetheless, you have people in your midst that can assist you with those things. I don't know how you guys can create a symposium, some type of question and answer session or something like that on a monthly basis where you guys can brainstorm on how to figure this thing out. There is no blueprint to this, as you can see. We're all just trying to figure it out with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. We have the Quran, we have the Sunnah, we have a level of understanding of those 2, and the technological advances that are at our beck, and we're just trying to, you know, make sense of it all. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to preserve and protect you all. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to preserve and protect our communities. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is وَلِيُّ ذَلِكَ وَقَادِرٌ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وسبحانك ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
There you go, man. It's important gifts. I know you got one. It's too big for you.
It was too big.
So this is an extra large.
Okay.
We got a large on the side if you wanna.
Let me see.
Then I got you this book here.
Come on, buddy. Who are you talking to?
I need to, I need to eat, man. These guys don't feed me.
A brother from Jersey